All right, and we're live. And I want to thank everybody for showing up today. If you do show up today, of course, but most important person that's here today is Mike Douglas. Mike, thanks for being on the radio last weekend, and thanks for showing up today.
Hey, my pleasure. Great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to get right into it. And I was asking you what's a win for you today. You heard that Stanislaus County is no longer requiring masks, right? If you're vaccinated, you heard that, right?
Yes, right. However, my concern is the last paragraph of that, which says that they can rescind. Basically, they can rescind that at any time. So, my suspicion is if we go back above 20, that we'll be back where we were. And my question is, what's magic about 20 cases per 100,000 anyway? Why not 15 or 30? You know what's. But anyway.
What are you going to do?
What do I know?
Yeah, we're not government. They know better than us.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, according to my wife, they should go off of ICU beds, which to me, I think is so stupid. And I'm pleased I won't get in trouble when I get home. But basically, the ICU beds, they only have so many ICU beds, right? So the one thing that happened the last time we went through this and they were opening up those different places for more, I'll get the military involved, open up, mass casualty places that ship every COVID patient to one location, put them in there, open the ICU regular beds back up to everybody who can have. And she says this is the issue: they're filled up with people with COVID, and someone comes in that has a heart attack, they have no bed for them. Right. And that's the issue. So I understand her part of it, but we can't fix her.
Well, and then you have the nurse to patient ratios that have to be maintained. I mean, there's it's a domino effect, I'm afraid, that puts us in a bad situation overall.
Right. But that's not what we're here to talk about. What are we here to talk about? Actually, I want to know.
What would you like to talk about?
Well, I want to, a lot of people want to get into what we do, right? Radio. Right. And I remember when it was brought to me 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago, and they're like, hey, you want to do radio, blah, blah, talk. We need a local show. And I was like, people still listen to radio? Because I didn't. I listened to, I listened to CNBC and Fox Business, those, the news channels about what's going on. I didn't listen to talk radio. And I'm amazed how our area is really into what we do. I hope that came off okay. I didn't mean it the wrong way.
Yeah, no. I am surprised at how many, when I'm just out there or I'm receiving emails or I'm out in public, even when I've been doing funerals, people have come up and said, are you the guy that's on at 3:00? And they listen. And it's amazing how many people are listening. And I think, Ed, one of the big things is, and this is a credit to iHeart, to provide that space where we can be live and local, that ability to have a local voice. And it's not necessarily just a conservative voice. We have people that are liberal. We have people all over the map, that call in. I think there's just a great desire locally to be heard, simply to be heard. And I think that's one of the things that drives the success of what you and I do.
Yeah. And for us, I mean, we want both points of views. We don't want just one view, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're not the government. We want both views. I'm sorry. Hey, it's my show. I can say whatever I want sometimes, right? Yeah. Someone will get mad.
I worked for government for about 25 years in the emergency response end of it. And I understand what you're saying.
Right. I was in the Navy, so I can say the same thing.
Well, you fully understand it. Yeah.
And back then I couldn't say anything, right? Because when you're in the service, no matter who the president is, you're not supposed to talk bad about anything. You're supposed to just do what you're told. And that's one of my biggest problems, doing what I'm told.
Well, that's why I have my own company. It's good to have that spirit. Yeah, that's good. That's a good thing.
So we can talk about a lot of things, but one thing, what got you into radio? I mean, did you just fall into it years ago? Because you've been around a while, and I don't mean you're old. I just mean you've been in this.
No, you mean I'm old. Let's just be honest.
We're both getting up there.
No, actually, it started when I was about 7 years old.
Wow.
And I had my first time on radio was at 7. And my grandfather, this was down in the Pasadena area where I grew up, and there was a independent station FM back then, and that was in the 1960s. FM was, wow, what's
Brand new.
FM? What's an FM? You had to get a special radio. And anyway, so I think I was reciting a verse from scripture or something. Anyway, about 7 years old, and I became enamored with this thing called the microphone. And my grandpa bought me a little. I say it's a toy, but it was an amplified, PA system. And from then on, it was a fascination with the microphone and electronics. And so I really had my hand in the broadcast industry, well, for a long time. And throughout the years, in college, that was my degree, broadcast journalism. I wanted to be a journalist that gave the story straight. And I found out that there weren't a lot of outlets that were interested in doing the story straight. In fact, interesting story there. Back in the day down in LA, there was a station called K Earth 101. And all of us who were teeny boppers then listened to K Earth 101 because that was the cool station to listen to. So after I got my degree in broadcast journalism, I went and to do an audition to be in their news department. And I had done this investigative report and I gave it to the news director, this lady there. And she looked at me and she said, I don't really care what you say as long as you make it golden. I said, what do you mean you don't care what I say? I mean, we're pursuing truth. I've checked. I don't really care what you say. I just want you to make it sound good. And that's what soured me. Right. That went into law enforcement at that point. Partially so.
Because that's so much better. That's so much better.
Well, yeah, right. So anyway, so bottom line was, but I kept my hand in it. I did animated voices in Hollywood on the side. And I did a project with Pat Boone. And I did a variety of different things throughout the years and kept my hand in it. So when I came to the Central Valley here and in government, I did a lot of their public service narration and that sort of thing. But anyway, coming to Modesto, Trevor Carey came around 2015. A lot of people may remember Trevor. He follows us on air at 4:00 now. Anyway, he was on air and he was talking about, somebody ought to be removing all this gang graffiti in Modesto. How come nobody's doing that? Well, our Advancing Vibrant Communities nonprofit, we were taking kids out and doing that. So I called him up and I said, well, in fact, we are. And I explained it. So anyway, what that developed into was I was invited to come and do a guest shot or two. And then it developed a relationship with KFIV and almost a year ago now, through evidence of the fact that God has a sense of humor, I was given my own show from 3 to 4 p.m. And so here we are.
Don't act like you didn't work for that. Hey, before I forget, if people, I was asked about the information for your vibrant communities, how to get a hold of you, because there's some people who need some help on their house.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what's that number?
Yeah, the phone number is 209-544 9571 209-544-9571 or vibrantcommunities.org vibrantcommunities.org.
And since we're on that right now, since we brought it up and I didn't want to forget, why don't you explain kind of what your organization does, that you're part of?
Yeah, the bottom line is we research needs in the community, basically within Stanislaus County. We research needs in the community, legitimize them, just to make sure that people aren't, if somebody's making $500,000 a year and they want a free kitchen table, they're probably not the person we want to serve, but it's a single mom or dad trying to work 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet and they need a crib for their kid, or it's a veteran that's disabled and he needs some safety bars, some grab bars in his commode area or in the hallway in the bedroom. We will go out and we will, through volunteer service, provide those goods or services that they need. And It ranges from, I mean, there are people coming out of homelessness that get into a rental place, can't afford kitchen utensils. And so some of our volunteers will supply kitchen utensils. So basically, if a volunteer can conceivably safely do it, we'll research that connection, verify that the person is actually in need. And then through the website, we make that connection between the donor and the recipient. And there are some security things involved, so there's safety. But that's the bottom line of what we do 365 days a year.
Well, I'm glad somebody's doing that. Excuse me, because there's a big need in our area. But it was funny. Well, first thing you talk about when you get your first, they get that place, they don't have utilities. I was thinking when we first get our first place, we don't have all that usually. What I mean? As a,
Right.
you move out when you're 18 or whatever it was. I remember in the Navy when I went out off base, it's like we had nothing, right? You had to go get everything, and we went to you don't make a lot of money in the Navy when you first are in. So
Absolutely. Can I tell you a quick Navy story?
sure.
My dad was in the Naval Reserve for over 30 years and retired out finally as a senior chief. But the interesting thing was when he wanted to get out and retire, the Navy wouldn't let him because they had him in recruiting and he was doing a great job with it. Actually, the base was near Dodger Stadium down in LA. He's doing such a good job. They said, no, you can't retire. We're not going to let you do that. You have to keep going. And so then he said, okay. And then he kind of liked what he was doing. And then the Navy came and said, well, it's time for you to retire. He says, I don't want to retire. They said, well, you have to retire. So when he wanted to, he couldn't. When he didn't want to, he had to. But anyway, that's the military, right?
Or life.
Or life. Very good. Yeah.
Right. Life happens when we don't plan, or life happens while you're planning to live your life, or whatever that story is. But
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
all right. So I wanted to make sure we hit that part of it because you do a lot of good work through that organization, and that you talk about it all the time. Anything? I mean, what about Modesto? I mean, because I had someone ask me, how do you get into radio? How do you do this? And for most people, I'm like, podcast is the closest to radio as you could get these days, right? And because that's and you have total. There's not like a time you have to be on, but you produce it, you put it out there weekly. There are some platforms that you could actually do it live, like right, because Blog Talk Radio is one of those platforms where you can do your own show on there live, right? You don't have to, yeah. I guess there's not a question there, right?
Yeah, we use Blog Talk a lot in our setups. Yeah.
Well, and that's amazing because I didn't realize, because I saw Blog Talk a long time ago and it's like, oh, you can set a radio show. Didn't realize you could actually use it to run your actual radio show through like iHeart and what KFIV like you guys do.
Yeah, I don't know that they know that, but yeah, I'm one that likes to find ways to make things work. And but it's an interesting thing, and I'm not picking on, because without Blog Talk, we wouldn't be able to take phone calls and that sort of thing. But anyway, it's very interesting. I'm going to shift here to customer service in that era, that general category. You can't talk to anybody there. You can't go a live phone call. You have to email. And so what happens is you send a question on an email and the Autobot gives you an automated response. Yeah, I know that. I've done that. So then you email back, say, yes, I've done that. And then they'll email back, have you done this? Yes, I've done this. And so a week later, you finally get to the issue. And this isn't just Blog Talk. This is in a lot of, especially electronic-based services. What we could do in 3 or 5 minutes on a phone call, it takes a week and a half to do by email. So anyway, but it's one of those things where I think you need to learn the system yourself. You need to explore it yourself, find out what it can do, what its limitations are. I like Blog Talk a lot. I think it's decently affordable. And like I said, we depend upon it to do what we do, especially during the COVID-19, because all our broadcasts come from our clandestine studio that's guarded by the two 500-pound mastiffs, Brutus and Gigantor. So it's a very secure but unknown location where we emanate from.
Yeah, it's what we'd say every week from my bunker somewhere in the United States.
There you
So,
go.
you make that stuff up as you go. But yeah, I mean, it's been, since March of 2020, things have drastically changed for us. And how do we do our show? How we can't go in the studio anymore. My wife loves it because now I don't give up my Saturdays. Right. Because she's like, can we go to the cabin this weekend, please? I got the show this Saturday right afterwards, and it doesn't just take an hour. It takes a little bit longer. But this way it makes, you do it Wednesday, they edit it, put it, and it's ready to go for Saturday. I wish we could be live again. I guess I gotta be careful what I wish for. Right. Cause I might get it. The issue is, some people are like, why don't you do this during the week or whatever? It's really hard to find the hours to do this because they don't have a lot of extra hours right on the shows.
So. No, they don't. And, I haven't actually been in studio, well, for over a year and a half, I think.
Yeah.
It's all been remote, and that's a mixed blessing. There are big advantages to being in studio where you have the engineer or the producer in the glass, across from you and and all of that. But on the other hand, it's very convenient to do it this way as a remote. And it turns out there are a lot of folks around, even some syndicated folks around the nation that actually do it remotely, not in the actual radio station studio.
Yeah, a lot of big names do. They have their own studio at their house. They do, and then they send it. Whether it's live or whatever they do, and that's kind of where this whole thing's going. I mean, you can do it anywhere. I mean, if we watch Fox News, CNN, CNBC, a lot of those people aren't where they act like they are. Right, they're at their house, right, and they got a set behind them. So it's just amazing what we're able to do now with the software, and it's going to be amazing what it's going to be like in 5 years from now. But back to your thing about customer service, we had the same problem. I mean, if you ever try to go with Facebook or anything, if you're doing anything on any of those platforms, you can't. And our kids are learning that, hey, they'll text somebody for a week, which if they pick the actual phone for, like you said, 5 minutes or 2 minutes, they'd have that answered right away. And I think we need to get back to that customer service, get back to, we've always been there with what we do. I'd rather talk to my clients. I don't care, even if they say text me or whatever, you can't understand my text the way I can understand your voice. Right.
Absolutely. And seeing the person's eyes, watching their body language, that all helps build a relationship. There's no relationship over a text or an email. And I think at customer service, one of the most important, and I work retail for a small amount. I'm a lousy salesman. And
I'm a great
salesman.
I love this stuff.
I know you are. I could learn from you in that regard. I worked for an electronics retail outlet that shall remain nameless for the moment. Anyway, for a couple of years, and what drove me nuts was they'd want me to sell stereo equipment I knew was going to break down in about 3 or 4 months. I couldn't do it.
No, that's not.
But other guys, they could sell it. It would go out the door. I'm going, man, I just can't bring myself to sell that. But I learned a lesson from a good friend of mine who, for a long time, was one of those sales reps for a coffee company. And he's the guy that would go into supermarkets, your local market, whatever, and set up the displays for, I can't remember the coffee company, but for whatever coffee. And so I said to him one day, I said, so how would you rate your coffee? Is it good? He says, it's the best coffee in the world. I said, really? How do you know that? He says, it just is. I said, well, what about if you worked for Pete's? I just, took a name out of the air. He says, well, if I worked for Pete's, then it would be the best coffee in the world. I said, okay, I got it.
Well, and so for me, and for most really good people who are in sales, they have to, their product, they have to understand it. They got to back it and they got to love it. Because if you don't love the product you're selling, then you're lying. And I don't lie. And because what I do is I help people get into homes and I do mortgages, but I got to explain to them the process. We all sell. And I was at an event last week and I was on stage for 10 minutes, not a big deal. But basically, I talked about sales, how we all sell, and we forget that we need that knowledge in life. You have a kid who wants to run across the street, you got to talk to them not to run across the street. That's a form of selling. You're explaining stuff to them. Same thing. And then you need to know, if you know this skill, you can use it to get a raise. You can use it to get a lot of things, right? We all need it. It's just we forget that we need that skill, and it makes our life easier if we know it. So,
Well, and the building of customer relationships to me as a consumer is so important. Drives me nuts when I walk into a market, I'm at the checkout lane. I love it when they look me in the eye and say, "Hi, how are you doing?" Even if they got the mask on. I'm doing great. Doing great. Thanks for asking. But the problem for me is when you got this, young person who's talking to their other friend who's working there, and they're engaging a conversation, and it's like you're not even there. I'm going, well, you don't really care that I'm here as a customer. Why should I come back? And so I think that the extra effort, and it's not phony, it's just the extra effort involved to smile, make eye contact, and try to develop some kind of relationship. What that says to me is, wow, I'm coming back here because they appear to care about the fact that I'm a customer. So I'm going to come back and give them my business.
well, and I want to take the other side, but it's also on us. You're out to dinner, you're sitting there, and have the conversation with the server, right? And actually look them in the eye and talk to them. Yes. Or a friend of mine says, look them in the eyebrows, because the eyebrow tells you everything about people and how they're going to, like, round eyebrows tell you think about everybody around you and how you can relate to people. Brian Gawkey's got this whole thing. It's freaking amazing. And yes, I promote it a lot because I think it allows us to communicate with people better, understanding how to communicate with them, because it's all about building a relationship. And most people, we don't do anything until we think they're our friends or we've got a good relationship with them if we're going to buy something. So it's important. And for me, I like connecting with people. And that's why I like doing radio. I like doing the podcast I do. I like all that stuff because I like to find out about you. I know about me, but I'm very curious. I want to ask questions. I want to know everything about you. And I know we started this and we're in about 22 minutes and we talked a little bit about how you kind of got into radio. What keeps you there?
I look forward to that 3:00 hour because of the relationship. To me, what I have to say, okay, that's important, but what's important to me is the interaction with the audience. And even if there's not a call for maybe 10, 15 minutes, I'm talking to people out there who are processing what I have to say. And my approach is I don't tell people what to think. I don't tell them what to do. My mission is to give them information they may not have and then give them the opportunity to react to it or push back with it. You used a word a couple of minutes ago, Ed, that I think is so important, and that is being curious. I'm curious why people believe what they believe. I'm curious why they vote the way they vote. And not so much to change their minds. I just want to be able to ask questions and maybe dig a little deeper to understand them. So, if someone comes on the phone and says, and they haven't yet, thank God, but you're an idiot. I'm going, well, okay, why do you think I'm an idiot? Where does that come from? Yeah, right. Where's the red button? No, I'm curious. Why are you? And people will come on, and you can hear it in their voices. Some come with a little bit of trepidation, with an opposite point of view, and I try to make them feel very comfortable. I don't disrespect them. I don't hang up on them. If they go real long, I mean, this is radio, Ed. I mean, we have to hit our marks time-wise.
Right.
But I try to make it very comfortable for them to say what they want to say and react. And I want to hear about them, what their perspectives are. So I think the relationship with the audience is what keeps me jazzed about doing this every day. I never phone it in, as we used to say in the entertainment industry. I prep, make sure that I'm ready and do the best job that I can for this audience that I'm privileged to have.
Yeah. And your show you really got to prep for it, because the 2 times, actually 3 times, I think it took over. You really have to prep because it's a totally different thing. It's not like I have a co-host on the radio, which makes it so much easier. You can go back and forth, banter about stuff. When you're by yourself, it's you and the listeners, and it's getting them engaged. And it's funny you were saying about what I said about curiosity. Yeah, my wife's always constantly grabbing my leg, like telling me to shut up and stop asking questions, because I really want to know. I don't know if it ever happened to you, but it happens to me all the time. It's like, I really want to know why you thought that way. Not that I care that you and think you're wrong for it. I really want to understand why you thought that way and why you made that decision, because that tells me a lot about people and where I need to go with my show and different things to see where I'm at. And I think it's so important for us to understand each person's side, and we've gotten majorly away from that. And for me, this is all new about all the people fighting, and they don't really care about what you're talking about. They want to get their point across more than they care about you. Right. You've been around for a while longer than me. Is this like it was in the 70s? Because I remember someone saying this is just like 1968 during the Nixon thing and coming back and the war and people not liking each side. Is this completely different than that? You understand what I'm
think
getting at?
it's and this sounds dumb, but it's a different kind of different. I think if you look at 1968, you look at the 2 assassinations of that year, Robert Kennedy, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., you look at all the riots. 1968 actually was more violent than some of the recent episodes that we've had here in America. However, I think in the 70s and maybe into the 80s, a respect for building relationships was still there. I remember having conversations in college, and there wasn't any cancel thing there. It wasn't like, well, you can't think that. You shut up. Won't call on you again. It was, we were allowed to push back on each other respectfully, and I think that was considered to be part of the First Amendment, part of what you learn in college to hone your ability to reason together. We've lost that now. Now it's, my way or the highway. And it's like the kid who puts his fingers in his ears and goes, la, 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 so he can't hear what the other person's saying. That's sad. And, we ought to be able to discuss things, have different opinions, and disagree without being totally disagreeable. And I think that's the difference from what I recall in late 60s and maybe into the mid to late 70s.
I saw. All right, so I'm going to move a little bit here. I saw a thing yesterday about Dan Aykroyd when he used to make fun of Carter, right? And he was about, because they would say how great inflation was, kind of like what we're hearing now, right? And he would do these skits about it, and which you can't do now. Right. You couldn't make fun of the current president about that kind of stuff because you would be canceled and they'd get on you. We need to get back to being able to make fun about everything. I understand, we're in a different world and certain things, but I still think that should be, because if you look back in the 70s, we're there right now. Inflation wise, I know we're talking about not on this show about me, but we are going there. We're at 6%. We're on our way. But the funniest thing was that skit was about, you want to pay $75 for a cigar, which you can do that now, or $600,000 for your car. You're going to be wealthy because all this. And we are on our way there, and we need to make some changes. And I mean, policy changes, right? And I don't want to get into the whole, we need to keep, put term limits on people so they don't have to be there forever. I'm tired of people going in only worth, a couple 100,000 coming out worth 20, 30, $40 million. Absolutely. So that's our problem. It's not us. It's not you, me, anybody else. It's the issue is how the government's going. And that's the problem. So.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that. And I just getting back to humor. And I've been a cop. I've been a fire chief. I've been in industries where you see the darkest side of society, and you've seen stuff in your military service as well, Ed. You've got to have humor to handle it, or literally your head will explode inside. We have to be able to allow humor back into the conversation and just say, you know what, that's humor. and I choose not to get offended. People don't understand that we can choose not to be offended. We choose to be offended. And really, if we're going to make it, we have to make different choices and allow humor to be a relief valve for us. It's very, very important in my mind.
And I totally agree, because if you look on, I do that Helping the Brave usually Tuesdays and Thursdays at 3:30, and vets talk differently to each other, right? We couldn't talk that way to a civilian. They would,
Right.
turn us in, and we get in trouble. But we're used to having that humor that dealt with situations that not normally people have to deal with, and that's basically, like the what is he in the center, whatever, Dan whatever, the guy with the one eye, when he was
Crenshaw,
blown
yeah.
up. Yeah, Crenshaw, thank you. He was like, dude, don't get blown up. That's the first thing he's telling everybody.
Yeah.
As he's going to the hospital, right, with all that, he's like, dude, it sucks to get blown up, right? That's how you deal with bad situations, and that's how they talk to everybody. And those are things that we need to get back to be okay with it. I think as I talk to people, I think a lot of us are there. I think that the whole people are stirring up stuff. I think let's put it this way. I think there's 10% on each side who their whole goal is to make everybody miserable as they are. And I don't think we all are that way. I think there's 80% of us out there who feel that we can get along with anybody, and we need to go that way going forward.
Absolutely. 100% agree with you.
Yep. All right. Well, since you agree with me, I think it's time for us to go.
Okay.
Is there anything else you want to? Right at that time. Producer's calling me saying we got it. I'm just kidding. Is there anything else you want to add on today that I missed for you?
I don't think so, Ed. Just appreciate you willing to be a guest host and bringing your skills and your giftings to our humble little show there at 3:00. And I know that we're going to be issuing more invitations in the future. So I just want to thank you for being available.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. But I hated it in the beginning, to be honest with you, because it's outside my comfort zone doing that. But you know what? By the third one, and having your producer just do this and type, ask this way, it helps you, because it's not a way that you're used to doing things. It's totally different, and you have to get more comfortable with that. And I'm just glad you have Mike there in your corner.
Great. Absolutely. He's amazing.
All right. I want to thank everybody for watching this. And if you're watching this after, just let us know if you like it, and you can always follow for more. And Mike, thank you so much for being on today, and just stay right there.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.